Hello and welcome. In this video, you are going to learn, albeit briefly, about what a reverse flow or flipped classroom design is. And you're going to learn it from someone who knows a little. But first things first, who even am I? So my name is Andi Craven, and I'm the full-time faculty member responsible for the Human Services Technology program here at Blue Ridge. This program helps to get students ready for the helping profession. So think like social work or any case management supportive environment like that. I'm also the coordinator for service careers here at Blue Ridge. And in all my spare time, I am a current student with the EDD Community College Leadership Program through Western Carolina University. So what is a reverse flow or flipped classroom? Well, these two phrases describe flipping the hybrid model. So standard hybrid models have the in-person meeting that you have with folks be the live lecture, you're doing the PowerPoint in the class, and then outside of that, online format, you are doing independent work, reading of the chapters and doing the assignments. So a flipped classroom or a reverse flow, you do the opposite. I put all of my lectures, like what you're watching right now, up on my courses for my students to review, and then they come to class and we actually do work surrounding the content that they learned online. But don't take my word for it.
The flipped classroom is a new method of teaching that is turning the traditional classroom on its head. Every day, thousands of teachers deliver the exact same lesson in class to millions of students. Every night, millions of students sit over the exact same homework, trying to figure out how to solve it. The flipped classroom is turning this upside down. Traditionally, students listen to lectures and take tests in class, and read textbooks and work on problem sets at home. In flipped teaching, students first study the topic by themselves, typically using video lessons on YouTube, and then apply the knowledge by solving problems and doing practical work in class. Modern schools who flipped their classroom report many benefits. 1. It allows all students to learn at their own pace, as videos can be watched again. 2. It's more efficient, as students enter the classroom prepared to contribute. 3. It enriches the classroom, as more time can be spent on group work and projects. 4. Doing homework in class allows students to help each other, which benefits both the advanced and less advanced learners. Flipping also brings changes for teachers. Traditionally, teachers engage most with the confident students who ask questions. Flipping allows teachers to target the students who really need help, instead of just those who are confident. Also, instead of instructing from the front, teachers guide on the side. This allows them to work more closely with individuals or small groups. Teachers that are not great presenters can use third-party videos to explain the concept and focus on methods of teaching that suit their style, such as project work or experiments. Once video lectures are made available online, teachers don't need to give the same lecture over and over again. Again, they gain more time to focus on the needs of their class. Many scholars also argue that the flipped classroom model promotes equal learning opportunities, as all kids get the same attention when doing their homework. Currently, kids with caring parents, older siblings at home, or expensive private tutors have a clear advantage over those who don't. Let us know what you think. If you were a teacher, tell us if this model would be possible in your classroom.
So as a student in the program at Western that I am participating in, I was introduced to this reverse flow method. One of my professors over the summer, when we began back in June, reached out to us and let us know that anything that we needed to prepare for class that following weekend was available on their platform. They use Canvas. We were to watch those videos and come ready to discuss the material. When I arrived in the class, we hit the ground running, and it wasn't just a simple restatement of everything that we had learned. We truly took what we had learned online and dove into it in a practical way within the classroom setting. It's actually, not to be dramatic, I'm a little dramatic, It really changed my life. So I decided to give it a try. I found out that I learn better when I'm doing more independent study and digging into the reading and watching the lectures online, and then going into the classroom and in a kinesthetic way address the material. So I decided to try it in 2 of the classes that I'm teaching. When we meet, I will be discussing with you the things that have gone really well and the things that I've learned and the things that I'm going to do differently next semester, as well as give you any tips and hear any tips that maybe you've tried if you've ever tried this format. I cannot wait, and I'm super looking forward to this. All right, so if you guys would go on the Jamboard and just off of what you saw, assuming that you were able to watch the pre-recorded portion of this, just write 3 feeling words. Doesn't matter what they are, totally not a big deal. It can be good is not a feeling, it has to be an actual feeling, but just 3 feeling words that you're feeling when you're imagining flipping anything in your classroom. What does it feel like? So again, it's that 4th icon down on the little menu on the left.
Andy, I think I need edit access.
So I've given it to everybody. It says Blue Ridge Community College. Why this is not going well already, and I just kind of want
Andy.
to crawl under my desk.
Now
Oh,
that
yeah.
you're in it, look at it, and do you see on the bottom right-hand corner, well, not, on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little eyeball and it says view only. Change that so that other people can edit, like click the little down button.
Where I don't see an eyeball.
You probably don't. Go to the share and change it to edit instead of view.
That.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can we delete this part of the recording just so that if
Yes.
anybody else...
We're going to pretend like we just started. Vanessa has a beret on her head, and that's way fun.
This is literally like what I had a nightmare about that this was going to be like. So awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's over. So the nightmare's over. Now the dream can begin. So what do we need to do?
Do 3 feeling words when you think about flipping your classroom after watching that pre-recorded video. What does it feel like for you? The only rule on this is the word good or bad are not feelings. Like pick an actual word that's a feeling. Nervous, scary.
I still only have view.
Do a refresh, Vanessa.
Yeah, because I don't know how to individually. I put editor for everybody though. I hope that worked. All right. Ooh, good. We're all over the place. I was hoping that we would be. All right. So we've got some anxiety. We've got feelings of knowing that we have to be prepared. It feels a little scary, a little hopeful. We don't want to disappoint students, making sure that you've got an agenda, all of those things, yes. So all of us are feeling kind of all over the board about it. All right, Sarah, can you go to the next slide? Sarah? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so here's how my classroom flows. So for the classes that I flipped, I open it up with an icebreaker. Usually it goes better than what we just experienced. And I'm all over the board with the icebreaker. So sometimes I use like polls anywhere. Every now and then I'll do like a silly little like gim kit, and I keep it really low stakes, and it's just under 5 minutes. So we walk in, everybody should have watched my videos before and read the chapter, and they come in ready to go, and we open it up with an icebreaker. Next, we hit like the next. Yep. And then we do either breakout group work or large group activities. So I'll give you an example of what we did yesterday in my addiction and recovery course, Substance Abuse Overview, SAB 110. I opened it up with an icebreaker, and then I had them get into pairs, and there were 3 groups. And what they ended up doing is we were doing the biopsychosocial model of addiction and recovery treatment. And so I had a bio group, a psycho group, and a social group, and they all laughed that I called them a psycho group. And there were different tenets within that we learned about, both through their reading and my lecture, that they were to dig in deeper. And they had a list of discussion questions. And they rolled around those discussion questions, and then we came back to a large group activity. Will you click it again? And in the large group activity, they came back and they reported on what they discussed. And then what always ends up happening is one group will say, here's something that we really couldn't decide on, or here is a topic that we still felt curious about. And then the larger group will come back in, and then a bigger discussion comes. Next. Typically, if I don't do a breakout group, we do something like a supplemental video, or I run case scenarios, but spelled right. I'm not sure. This is, wow, there's a typo on this slide. And so the case scenarios are everybody's favorite. I write all of them, and I base them very, very loosely on cases that I worked in my career in social work. And so what that looks like very much depends on the topic that we're talking about. So I change a lot of details so that you could never figure out who the case is. And then I come up with probing questions, thinking questions, and I will not give the students the answer. So like for my ethics class, there usually isn't a right answer, and that makes everybody feel really frustrated at the end of class. But for my other classes, usually what happens is we create like a set of goals for this client and stuff like that. So it's like real life training as though these were real cases. And I run it like it's a staffing, and my students are as engaged with the staffing process as they would be if they were really in the field. Next slide. Before I go on to the bullet points of the next slide and talk about what went well, do you have any questions about what it looks like between the online portion and the in-person portion? No? Can everybody still hear me? Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Okay, so the in-class discussion component, when they're really working on the content, is that the homework?
No, it's
Okay.
completely different. Now it does tie in. So what I do is I'll look in, because I don't always remember what the homework assignments that I created for that module are. And so as I'm creating, I do it a couple weeks in advance, but as I'm creating like the flow of what we're going to do, I look at what their homework is and I think, okay, how can I not repeat this, but how can I help them answer this homework within what we're doing in the classroom? So if the homework is to create a crisis plan and a safety contract with a client who has some passive suicidal ideation, then I will make sure that in class we go over the suicide risk assessment pieces that we learned. Does that make sense?
It does. So the flow is preparation by reviewing the lecture at home.
Yes. Yes.
In-class discussion activity, video, something.
Yes.
To support the homework that they then go home and do.
Yes.
Okay, I'm getting it now. All right, thank you.
So it's, and I try to incorporate all of these pieces. So the videos are obviously visual and auditory learning, right? And then whatever they're reading is obviously visual because they're reading it. And then they come into class and I try to do at least one kinesthetic exercise that allows them to kind of take it to the next level and then reinforce that with the homework. So I'm thinking on all these different levels, and then the homework is always just reinforcement. Any more questions? Those were good questions.
Andy, do you have or have you had issues with student, and maybe you're going to get to this later, with students not doing the prep work? Because that seems to be the problems that I've had in the past. Is I've planned all these things contingent on them having done the prep work, and then they come and they have done nothing, and then it throws everything off.
Yes, so that has absolutely happened, and I am gonna, when my what could be improved on, I did not include this in there, but so I'm glad that you brought it up. I ended up giving 15 minutes of class for them to skim the chapter. But I didn't let them off the hook. And what I've done is I've used the lesson function on my courses, because when I started this, I didn't know how to use anything else, to be honest with you. And I attached a grade with it. And so they had to complete it in order to get a grade for it. And so students who have not watched it end up with a 0. And I made the participation grade for one of these classes 30%. So if you choose not to do it before you come to class, it majorly cuts into your final grade. So I upped the ante for their buy-in. Now, I don't love 30% participation. It's not my fave. But what I can tell you is that only lasted a week or two, that people thought that I was not serious about them being prepared. And then they became prepared. And then it hasn't been an issue in over a month, because everybody just knows this is how it works now. Very good question. I'm glad you asked that. Anything else? Any other questions before I? All right, so here's what went well. The content that people have been reading about is coming alive in the classroom. And that really matters in a program like mine, because I'm sending people out into the world to help other humans during what, quite frankly, is likely one of the darker moments of someone's life. And it's not enough to just read about these things. You have to really understand, like, what is active listening? How do you build rapport? How do you have the person across from you trust you when they just met you and life has them on their knees, or the judge made them come talk to you? So I think my students are understanding these concepts, especially in terms of the relationship pieces that we do, 10 times more than, I don't know, I just made that number up, but a lot more than they were before, because reading about active listening and suicidal ideation risk assessments is very different than practicing them. Next. I will say this. I was having some lackluster attendance in the spring, and I was pretty bummed about it. And I knew it was because my students were bored, because I was bored. Continue. And because I started to have more fun with it, so did they. It is not outside of my abilities to stand in front of a classroom and teach a PowerPoint, but it is absolutely not my favorite. And I truly believe that because my energy has shifted, that has shifted the energy of the students in my class. Next. And to be honest with you, coming from the social work field into education, I don't know that I really knew what to do with the online portion of my hybrid classes. And so what ended up happening is the first couple semesters, especially, anything online was just busy work, because I felt like I had to do more time on task stuff to like meet those check marks. Now, the online format has its like place and its thing, and then the classroom is alive. All right, so now we're going to talk about what could have been better. So first and foremost, I, as a human, really struggle with moderation. If I do anything, I do it a bazillion %. And as a result of that, 2 weeks before classes started in this fall, when I decided I was going to do this, I flipped 2 16-week classes like all at one time. And that made me feel a little stressed, to be honest. Next. I also, my first videos were like 16 to 20 minutes long. And that is wild. I don't even watch television shows for that long without getting distracted. And so what I ended up doing is I pretty much, like, after the first month, I started to take time and do shorter videos. So my videos are 5 minutes or under, and I do them by topic. So going back to the biopsychosocial treatment model for addiction and recovery, I had like a 4-minute video discussing the different components of what we understand biologically is going on when you're trying to achieve recovery. I did the same short snippet video for the psychological pieces, and then I did the same thing for the social pieces. Next. And everything doesn't have to be all or nothing. There have been a couple of the topics that I've done this semester that I really think could have been done and would have been better in a live setting. For example, we talked about women in recovery and a lot of the specific biological factors that women in particular experience. And they had a lot of questions. And I spent the majority of like the first 30, maybe even 40 minutes of class that week answering their questions about my video. And it occurred to me that when concepts are this, not convoluted, but complicated, and there's a lot of different factors, and the answer to a lot of their questions is, well, it depends, that might be a topic that's better covered in class with a PowerPoint, and they can ask me those questions live rather than they have to wait 5 days after they watch the video and they've forgotten the question that they had. Next. And then learning H5P, I think would have been better. Jamie and I sat down 2 weeks ago and he taught me how to make more interactive video content. And I think it keeps students engaged a little bit better. My videos are pretty boring, pretty one note. And that's just a function of the fact that I don't understand the technology of it all yet. And so moving forward into the spring, the classes that I'm teaching in a flip style, which is all of them in the spring, and that's what I've been diligently working on the last month, is flipping all of them, is I'm going to be making more interactive videos. And what I like about H5P is you can put pop-up questions or random fact boxes and stuff like that. And I just think it makes a more fun interactive experience for the student. Next slide.
And before you go on, Andy, it also can inform the grade book. Depending on how you pull those H5P videos into your My Courses shell, it can directly feed into the grade book. So it could be an assignment where there's a grade attached to it, or it could just be that they completed it. It depends on how you want to set it up.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about what went well or what could have been better? No.
What's the average group size?
Okay, so my classes are pretty small. One of my classes has 12 people in it and the other one has 6. We started with 8 in the 6th class, but we had some tricklers. I will be interested to see, because I'm flipping a class that already has 16 people enrolled in it, and I'm interested to see how this shifts with a bigger class. Does that answer your question?
So if you like the class with 12, do you break them into groups?
I do sometimes, yeah, and it depends on what we're doing. And so, for example, 3 weeks ago, we were looking at ethical issues surrounding if you have a dual relationship with a client, and I gave different scenarios, but I only gave 3 scenarios, and so I broke up into groups of 4. The other piece to this that I really should mention is I'm still doing the high flex model in my program. And I know this is true for Rose as well. I have students that don't even live in this state who are in my program. So I've had to like learn to pre-communicate with IT, like, hey, I'm going to do a breakout session so that they can kind of be ready. And that's something that I probably could have included on the what could be better slide. It's really important to let IT know if you've got a high flex model, just so that they're at the ready when you need to get the breakout room going.
Rose, you've got a question?
Would it be better to, or did you flip the classroom with your seniors or your freshmen?
I flipped the
previously
classroom
train them?
I call them my OG students. I flipped my class with my students who have been with me longer. My introduction class is the one that I did not flip.
Okay. How do you think that that's going to go with your, well, I mean, your OG students, they just accepted it, like this is what's going to be happening from now on?
They sure did, 100%. They're sort of used to just like they come in the classroom and I'm just like, we're going to do something completely different. Like they're pretty used to that. My intro class, I can answer that because I have done 2 lectures. I've done it flipped for 2 things. When we did the domestic violence chapter and when we did the addiction and recovery chapter. And I will say I had about half of them actually watch the video before, which is abysmal. It was a little frustrating. I had been talking about it for 3 weeks leading up to it. So it's not like they hadn't, and I sent out course announcements and reminders. And now remember, before next week, make sure that you watch the video in your lesson. So I think the jury is still out for the half that chose not to, but the half that did, several of them came up to me after class, and actually one of them is one of the students that gave this reaction. I had them, I was like, if you guys have a feeling about flipped classrooms, email me your reactions. And so Sarah, if you'll go ahead and click, you can see what their reactions are. There's 3. So the third one was from one of those newbies. So I think the reality is that this does not speak to everyone. And I also think that speaks to the need to be flexible with flipping a classroom. Like I said, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So for students that love it, give them a little taste of it. And for students that hate it, have weeks that you're not doing it. It's like I have 3 kids and none of them like the same foods. So every day it's just this balancing act of like, what am I going to feed the family that isn't complete and utter crap that they'll all eat? That's kind of how I feel about this as I look at my classroom of 21 students and I'm like, I'm not going to make everyone happy with this method. So what can I do to incorporate as much as I can for different learning styles at least? Yeah. Okay, next slide.
I kind of have a question, but I'm going to save it, but I'm going to ask a question if you don't get to it.
Well, we're going back to the Jamboard, so I don't think I'm getting to it. So go ahead and ask before we go back.
So I don't think we really got at, maybe I'm forgetting because I watched your video a couple days ago. You said you were bored. What in terms of learning was missing?
So I don't know. I think that there were 2 things that were happening. I think that as a person new to education, I was really struggling with what was my style.
Mhm.
And I think as a result of that, I am absolutely a subject matter expert. I know this stuff. I dream about this stuff still. But when it came to communicating it, I wasn't super effective in my methods of communicating. And also I really struggled with feeling like I needed to stand in front of the classroom and tap dance for them and perform for them because I was like, they paid for these classes. I'm supposed to perform in this way.
Mhm.
And it felt like when I did this, my main concern was, are the students going to feel like they're teaching themselves and then they come into the classroom and they're doing more work with the teaching?
Mhm.
But I explained all of it to them. I said, here's why I'm doing this. Here's my thinking. Here is some research to back up why this can be effective. And I want feedback at all times. And my students, especially those who have been with me for a long time, know I'm about that life. When I say I want feedback, I have proven to them and built trust with them that, as long as you're respectful, I want to hear what you have to say. And because of that open communication, like there was one activity that I did where the students felt like it was too high level. And I understood that. And so I was like, okay, I wonder what I could have done differently. And so then I kind of went back to the drawing board, and next fall, when I do it again, I'll look at that. So I think part of me saying I was bored was I'm bored now with my voice. Just talking and droning on for an hour and 15 minutes didn't feel like an invitation to learn to the students. It felt like I was talking at the students. Whereas this way has felt much more like a conversation that we're having about things that can be really hard. And I'm able to be present for them and help them and help model self-care while we discuss these topics live and in person in a way that I couldn't have done when I was defining domestic violence for them. Like, because I've already done the definitions. I did that on my courses.
Yeah. So I want to say a couple of things and give you some accolades that I don't know if you know you deserve them. First of all, like the transparency of your pedagogy is really powerful for students and is a way to invite students into their learning and understand why you're, that the fact that you're being overt and explaining that it's probably, yeah, it's adding ethos and credibility to your teaching approach, but it's also inviting them into understanding why they're experiencing the learning activities the way that they are. And so that's really, really a cool and empowering way to approach this. And I just want to congratulate you for stepping into that, because that's like a real vulnerability thing too, right? Like that takes a little bit of vulnerability. Like, here's why I'm doing this thing, and some risk. And then the other thing I want to just note is that what you're doing is you're acknowledging that the important piece here, and you said this, you didn't necessarily use these words, but you said that, you know, like it's going to feel more like an actual staffing, right? Yeah. So I think all of us really struggle with the question of, can they really apply what we're learning in this course? Can they transfer the knowledge from the taking in and maybe the introduction of practicing it to a direct application? And what you're creating for your students is more of an application experience in the classroom than maybe they would have gotten if you had continued to stand and talk at them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, just to go back to the question that Rose asked, one of the things that I've thought a lot about is, you know, those introductory courses, you're not really learning the skills, not in my program. It's laying the foundation. Like, what is psychoanalysis? What is existential humanistic therapy? What is crisis? What is stress? And all of those things. So maybe this really is that 200 level class piece of, we've set the foundation, and the flipped classroom style helps take it to the next level for students that are ready. It's just something I was thinking about.
Yeah, I totally disagree, but that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I really think that even our very first introductory students need to feel engaged with content, and it needs to be scaffolded differently. Maybe like you said, maybe there's certain things they're not going to be able to apply, but there's still ways for you to engage them in that classroom setting that you're going to get a better formative assessment of what they actually know. And again, so here's the other beautiful thing. What's new every semester in every section every semester is their learning. That's the exciting part for us. We can love our content, but after we've taught it for a couple of years, it's like, okay, I know, like, that's not exciting. Like, I don't get excited about teaching the same lecture for 30 times in a row, right? So the new and exciting part for you is the student engagement. And really it's more new and exciting for the students too. So I think that it's okay to know that, and to say that's a good thing for us to feature them. Let's feature them engaging and learning.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing. Part of why flipping my classroom was really important, but I didn't realize it until I was done doing it, is we talk about really triggering things. And a lot of us come into the helping profession because we have really high ACEs scores, which is adverse childhood experiences, or we have experienced something as an adult that has bothered us, or we know somebody who has been impacted by some of these issues. But even if you don't have that, these are really hard things. I did a lecture on the North Carolina child abuse statutes the other week, and like, that's a really hard conversation to have. And when you flip the classroom, it allows for a lot of caretaking of the students too. Like, where are you at? I stopped and did a random 5-minute meditation. We did a body scan and a breath work exercise. Just 5 minutes. It didn't take long, but it allows me to monitor the heartbeats in my classroom when I'm talking about things that I'm really used to discussing, but I recognize are really challenging. So if any of you ever talk about stuff that feels, even if it's not emotionally challenging, but like for me, accounting or anything related to numbers would be really challenging. And I would need to do breath work in a class for that to get through it. I'm taking statistics in the spring. I'm already breathing for it. So it's just a cool thing. I have a lot more freedom, and I don't feel like if I don't get to slide 18 by the hour and 15 minute, then I failed my students. And that really has helped too. Any more questions? I'm really sorry about the tech issues / the typo. Things over which I have no control.
I think we're okay.
So we're going to go back to the Jamboard, and I want you to think about, what is one thing that you could flip in your classroom? Not the whole class, you don't have to do the whole, but just like maybe one module, maybe there's one topic, maybe there's like a test review. What could you flip? And I'd like you to think about that and put it on the Jamboard. This is my first time using the Jamboard also, in case you couldn't tell. But I love it.
Mm.
Who did the case study prep? Who wrote that? Katie, was that you?
It was.
Can you talk about what that is in your class?
Yeah, so the Marketing 223 students, which is customer service, do a series of case studies to show analytical thinking and move through that process. They have a final case study and it's pretty intensive. We introduced it today and it was really me guiding them into it, but I provided so many resources to get them started in that module. I would love when we reconvene after the Thanksgiving break for them to really do the work. I felt like I was doing a lot of the work today and I really want them to do it. So I'm going to investigate that as we come back together, send them a little announcement to get them started and try it differently. Maybe some group work and discussions and kind of peer review as they're building up those final studies.
That's a really great idea. I love that. Let me know, just if you don't mind, just like shoot me an email and let me know how it went, or if you found out something that worked really well. Like, I just dipped my toes in this in August. I'm having a lot of fun with it, but I'd love to hear anyone else's experiences. Okay, so collaborative writing thesis statements, body paragraphs. Can you speak to that, Brian?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm just thinking. So I teach English, and you know, a lot of it's just the basic comp stuff, right? It's like I just like do my presentation. They go home, write a paper. That's just like how it's all. It gets for me. I mean, I don't know if I can. It's just me, but I feel like yeah, it gets a little like repetitive, right? And I think they sometimes get bored, right? I know I can get bored sometimes, right? And just that same, and I have that desire to like want to switch things up. And I'm just thinking, I mean, I know, well, you know, content, it's not a lot of like we don't have tests, right? We don't, it's writing papers. So I'm just thinking about ways that I can use class time better, where they can actually be like doing work. I don't know if it's like, I'm just kind of been kind of brainstorming as you've been talking, or just thinking about ways they can maybe, I'd love to have these like dynamic writing sessions in class, you know, where it's like a little bit more energized. Um, I don't know exactly how that would look yet, but yeah, just thinking about it. So
I love that idea. You could do like a writing workshop in the classroom, like, but
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
they need to know about it before online, and then they come in
yeah,
and
exactly, yeah,
workshop. I love that.
exactly, yeah.
I'd come to that. All right, and then Vanessa, one thing I could flip, revision plan for QEP course. Do you want to speak to that?
That was not mine. Mine was
Oh. Oh, I see it now. I'm sorry. There it is. Okay. Do you want to speak to that?
I'm looking at my professional development class where we work on interview skills, having them critique one another and teach one another better ways to interview, do's and don'ts, those things, instead of me doing it, have them doing it for one another.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And if you do that, I have a couple interview feedback forms that came with my interview techniques textbook, just if you wanted them to have something formal to do, but you wouldn't have to do that, but just holler at me if you need one.
Okay.
Sarah, do you want to speak to your flip?
Sure. My course that I teach right now is a mostly asynchronous online, but we have a few live sessions. And I'm wondering what it would be like to have them work independently for a bit and then in small groups to think through like plans around revising their course and do that live as opposed to doing it just asynchronously on their own time.
Yeah.
I think the collaboration piece is really like, because I feel like we kind of already have some conversation, but if I made it like a little bit more of a structured activity instead of just Sarah walks everybody through that, that could be a really cool experience potentially.
Cool. Well, I just thought of one more thing that I just wanted to say before we wrap up. One of the things that I love about this design is I have students in my classroom who themselves have knowledge and experiences that I don't have, just based on their previous employment or their lives. And this allows empowerment of students to share that knowledge with the other students. And I use guest speakers a lot. And in this way, not a lot, like once or twice a semester, but in a way, this allows the students to like fill in those gaps that the guest speakers are doing who are in the field now. And I think that that's been a really cool thing to see some of my students coming into their own, because they're like, oh, wait, I do know stuff. And that's been really cool. One of my students in particular who never spoke in class, I have to tell her like, okay, we have to move on now, which is neat because for 3 semesters, she barely said 2 words in my class. So that's been pretty cool. I hope this was helpful. Does anybody have any additional questions? Okay. You guys are welcome to come in my classroom anytime if you want to. I teach in 202 on Tuesdays, pretty much the whole day. So you can just pop in. Trigger warning though, we talk about really tough stuff. So
Thank you so much, Andy. We really appreciate you sharing, and especially again, just how brave it is to like try something bold, do this in a couple of sections, and then be like, yeah, I'll tell everybody about it.
yeah, that's, I was like, sure.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to be clear, I'm not an expert, but I am having a lot of fun with it. And it's really inspiring to make any little change in a class. And that's another thing I've learned is if you don't stay rigid, then you can have a lot of fun in your classes. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Andy.